If it's flying a helicopter, being an entrepreneur, losing weight, becoming rich, all these things take time. Everything takes time. Figure out what you want to do. And I live by the 4Ds, the elevation. So the first thing you have to do in all these steps, you first have to decide that you're going to take the steps. And once you decide, you have to commit to that process. The second thing is you have to develop habits. Habits is what creates long-term success. So you decide, you develop the habits, it creates discipline. And the last thing is you don't.
Jason, welcome. Man, the first time I ever saw a Black Hawk and that big swooping, it looks like a whale fin in the air, Like I was like, I gotta fly that one day. Of course, I've never had the opportunity to fly that. I've sat in a few, and that has at least piqued my interest enough. But welcome. I just so excited to have you, Black Hawk Army aviator. And tell me, like, what was it like learning to fly that big of a beast? I mean, that thing is like a school bus in the air.
Yeah, first, Sean, I want to thank you for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure. When we initially talked, I was immediately gravitated towards your energy, and I'm just appreciative to be here today. So the next thing is that big whale fin. It's actually called the stabulator, and it helps with the attitude of the aircraft. So as we increase our airspeed, it'll help keep the nose from pitching up and down. So it's a very essential part of the aircraft. Now, to answer your question, it was a little overwhelming in the beginning, but we did start with it's called TH-67s when I first went to flight school. I think it was a Jet Bell Rangers, a small helicopter, single engine, two blades on it. And then they slowly transition us to our advanced aircraft. That's what they call it in the military. I know when I got in the Alpha model, the first time I ever flew one, it was a little overwhelming, but as you know, with big machines, the big jets, big helicopters, there's a lot of systems in there that make it very easy to fly the helicopter. So it wasn't overwhelming after you got used to it. And I got to a point, I just felt like I had a big backpack on my back and just flew the crap out of it.
Yeah, I've noticed like the more you fly any platform or, just in aviation in general, it just becomes a part of you. Like that, the aircraft is you. And so when you think of like landing in a tight LZ or, a landing zone that's just really tight, well, you're just cognizant of where the tail's at and where the rotor disc is. And it just becomes part of you. You don't even think much of it. I'm assuming that's how it is with something as big as a Blackhawk. And I know there's even bigger ones. The H-53 is even bigger than the Blackhawk. The Chinook is even bigger. But yeah, so it's interesting. So talk to me. Like I remember when we initially talked, I was intrigued by your story about joining the military. You didn't join as a helicopter pilot. You later got into flying. So talk to me about that process when you joined the military, and then why you decided to really become an aviator.
All right, perfect. One thing I want to touch upon, I want to give a shout out to my crew chiefs. So even flying that big monstrosity of a helicopter, which even to me, I don't think the Black Hawk is that big because, like you said, the 53, humongous, a 47, humongous. Those are some big movers right there. Black Hawk, we're a medium sized aircraft. That's the family we're in with the helicopter family. And I just want to give a shout out to my crew chiefs because without them, they're the ones clearing us most of the time, especially in those tight LZs, calling dust. I don't know if you've done
Oh
dust
yeah.
landings. We've talked about that. When you got your crew chiefs calling that dust, you know when it's coming. So shout out to my crew chiefs and my flight medics that I flew with. Now, when I first joined the Army, it was a decision I had to make because realistically, I just didn't have the money for college. And my mom told me, hey, I'm not paying for your college. And with that, I agree with my mom because this is my opinion, Jason's opinion. I don't feel it's my obligation or a parent's obligation to pay for their kids' college. If you want to do it, right? But it's not their obligation. So my mom told me straight up, I'm not paying for your college. I respected it. So I said, hey, I'm going to join the Army. So that's what I did. When I first joined the Army, I was a 45 kilo. I fixed tank turrets. And the reason I picked that, the only reason I picked it, one, I thought it was a sexy job because I was going to be with tanks all day. And two, the Army gave me $40,000 for my Army college fund. So those were the two factors. Fast forward, I was in the Army I was in the Army about 4 years. I was getting ready to go to Iraq in 2003. And I was down in Fort Polk, Louisiana, digging this foxhole. It was May, hot. I'm sweating. and I see these helicopters show up, the Black Hawks and the Chinooks, and these guys are dropping sling loads. Chinook lands outside of our fob. Pilots get out and they're taking a nap. And I'm sitting here digging a 50 cal pit. So I look at these guys. I said, I'm going to do that because doing what I'm doing now is not going to work. So that's what I did. I went back to my TOC. I saw my first sergeant. I was like, we call him Top in the Army. I said, hey, Top, I'm going to fly helicopters. He's like, shut up, Santiago. No, you're not. I said, okay. So in May 2003, I just got back from Fort Polk, took the initiative, and I got my package submitted in October 2003, right before I deployed my first deployment in Iraq. And then I found out in January 2004, I got selected for warrant officer school.
And so did you have to deploy still? Or did that selection help you deviate from the deployment and then go straight into flight school?
So I actually found out while I was in Iraq.
Okay.
So the first board, the way it happens in the Army, you have to go through a board process. You get all the things you've done in the Army. Take it. I don't know if you do it now. We're talking 22 years ago. So I'm pretty sure the process has changed a little bit. It's pretty much digital now. Back then we had to fill out paperwork. So I had to submit everything to Department of the Army, HRC. They went through the whole process. Now your stuff gets put together for a board. So a bunch of aviators, warrant officers, they look at it and they decide if you're going to become a warrant officer and a pilot. So the first board was in November 2003. I didn't get selected. So at that point, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm just going to get out the Army. If I live through Iraq, I'm going to get out of here. Plus, when you get deployed, that's a priority. You pretty much have to get deployed, and I'm going to touch how you get out of it. Not get out of it, but there's some exemptions. So I got selected in January, the second board. You get 3 boards. If you don't make it on the third board, you're done. You don't get another turn. So the second board, I got selected. And when I got selected, as I said, I was in Iraq. At that time, there was such a high demand for helicopter pilots, aviators in the Army, and for special forces guys. So what happened was we're stop loss. That means we can't leave the unit that we're currently in because it's deployed. What the Army did was for people that got selected for special forces or aviation, they got that stop loss lifted. And in the process, they did send me home early. So I was about 5 months into the deployment. It was a year deployment. They sent me back early to go straight from flight school.
Wow. Wow. Did you feel like that was a blessing?
Yeah, it was a blessing. It was truly a blessing. However, it was like a not a bitter blessing, but it had its pros and cons, right? When I got from Iraq, it isn't what it is today. When I got home from Iraq, I literally came home from Iraq, packed my stuff up. We're talking about in probably a week, in about a 10-day time span. Came home from Iraq, packed up my stuff and my family at the time, and I moved from Washington State all the way to Alabama. So
Wow.
essentially, from a mental health standpoint, there was no time to decompress, nothing. I was just go, 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 go. And later on, that did catch up with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about just leaving your unit. You guys are deployed together for 5 months. You're in the trenches, if you will, and you're leaving your boys behind. Like, what did that do to you?
It was a tough transition. I think one of the biggest things I learned in the military was that selflessness. And a lot of us, we do the things we do for the people to our left and right. So I did struggle with that. It was a huge struggle. It was a blessing as well because immediately after I left, that's when things like the kinetic activity in Iraq really picked up. We're talking about mortar fire. I know there's one instance mortar rounds hit the DFAC that I was located at, killed several soldiers, one of them being my friends. So it was bittersweet. And it was something I had to not deal with, but I had to try to process it in that short amount of time because once again, I'm going from Iraq, Washington to Alabama straight to flight school. And warrant officer school, it's go, go, go. So essentially, I didn't have any time to really think about it, but I did struggle in the beginning with it
Yeah.
when I was
Yeah.
leaving.
Yeah. I can imagine that would be difficult for sure. So you get into flight school. You're in Fort Rucker, Alabama. It's hot. Tell me
Hot.
about what does flight school look like in the Army? Like, where do you start? What does the typical day look like? 9 to 5. I'm sure it's not 9 to 5. I'm sure it's a 24/7 kind of like boot camp almost. So talk to us about that.
One thing we said in flight school is in a lot of military schools is you're pretty much drinking water from a fire hose. And when I tell you the learning curve is extremely steep, I'm pretty sure you're familiar. Anytime you start something to that level, being a helicopter pilot, um, being a doctor, accountant, that learning curve is very, very steep. So essentially, what the Army does, they have this all figured out. You half the day, it was broken up in shifts. So half the time you'll spend in the classroom, and then the other half of the day you spend out on the flight line. Now the classroom, we're talking about weather, medical stuff. We're talking about all the basic aviator stuff, airspace, those type of things. That's what we teach in the class. They teach us in the classroom, and the Army has it figured out. They know how to make aviators. In my opinion, I know it's a biased one, but Army aviators are the best aviators in the world. That's what I tell people because we are very good at our craft and we do it a lot. So first half of the day, it's either the first half or the second half, and it's called day and night. Okay, so day and night shifts depending on what's going on. First half you're in the classroom. Second half you may be on the flight line. So you show up to the flight line. Day one, we have a tradition in Army aviation. It's called our nickel ride. So you bring a nickel, you present it to your IP. They go take you on that first flight, and I'll never forget my nickel ride. The IP, we're up at altitude. He's like, "All right, you have the controls." I look at him. You want me to fly this thing? I never flew a helicopter in my life. He's like, "Yep, you got it." So one thing I love about it, they let us fly the aircraft until we get uncontrollably safe, right? So they'll push the envelope a little bit, but they always let us stumble until it's something they could at least fix. So that's essentially what happens. We show up, go to the flight line. We do that time wise. It's been so long I don't remember, but we'll spend about the first. I would say flight school for me was 15 months. Normally, it's about 12 months. I had a little break in between due to some family issues, but majority of that time you will spend in a TH 50 TH 67, that smaller aircraft, learning how to fly instruments, um, land nav, dead reckoning and navigation. So majority is there, and then you'll spend probably 8 to 12 weeks in your advanced aircraft.
Okay, and so how does the aircraft selection actually happen? Like, so do you get to choose what platform you get to fly, or does the Army choose for you?
So what happens is it's called an OML or order merit list, and that's dependent upon PT score, your grades at flight school. So if we have 10 people, we're in a cohort essentially. There's a group of us that start flight school all together. And it's a mix depending on especially the time frame. Most of the time it's you may have some classes cohorts that are just all warrant officers. You may have some that are all, I'll call them O grade officers, the lieutenants and the captains and those type of officers. What happens is throughout the process of flight school, you get put on this OML. Now, there's a selection day. During selection day, you'll show up. The warrant officer will come into the room. He'll write down all the aircraft. All right, we have 10 Blackhawks, 2 Chinooks, 3 Apaches. And based off your OML, where you're at on the list, that's where you get the pick. Now, if you got the guys at the top three that pick all the Apaches, then you're not flying Apaches. So it's very important that you make sure you try to do your best throughout flight school.
Yeah, and it just the top achievers just rise to the top,
Correct.
and then they get choice. That's pretty neat. Okay, so you go through flight school. It's about 16 months, or I think you said 18 months, year and a half or so.
Yeah, it was about 15 months for
15
me. And
months.
like I said, it was only 15 months because I had a break in between. I had to
Mm.
take care of some family stuff. But normally, back in the day, so right now I don't know what it's called now, but when I went through, they just started a program called Flight School 21. And that Flight School 21 program, they streamlined it so it'll take 12 months essentially. And that was the average, 12 months. But before that, it took about 18 months. But the Army, once again, the Army is very good at what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was always attracted to the Army because of the warrant officer program. You didn't have to have a 4-year degree. You could go in as a warrant officer. I did not. I went the civilian route, but I that was always intriguing to me. And I always thought, well, shoot, the Army has the coolest helicopters anyway. Like by far the coolest helicopters. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So, and obviously, making having a program that creates really exceptional aviators is something that the Army is definitely known for. It's not the Top Gun, that's
Mm-hmm.
the jet world,
Yeah.
but that's just Hollywood sexiness there. Us boys that like to wiggle a cyclic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different story. So after flight school, what happened next? Where'd you go?
One thing I want to touch upon real quick, the Army has a program, and this is for young people out there, ladies, guys, whatever the case may be. They do have a program out there. It's called From Street to Seat. That's the terminology we use in the aviation world. Essentially, you can go from high school to flying helicopters. Now, is it easy? No, but it is possible. And in fact, when I went through flight school, there's at least 2 to 3 guys that were literally 18 years old, just graduated high school. Now they're at Warrant Officer Candidate School with us, and they're about to be a pilot. So everybody out there, anyone that's listening that's inspiring to be a helicopter pilot, when you go to that recruiter, don't let them blow smoke up your tail. Okay, there is a program. I know that program still exists today. You can go straight from high school to become a warrant officer. And I actually got a buddy right now who's still in the Army. He's a W-4. He told me he had 3 street to seat guys that he was training right now. So it's still a thing and a viable thing. Your question, what was it again? Sorry about that.
Yeah, just what was your next steps after flight school? But before you get to that, that is super intriguing to me because my son is just infatuated with helicopters and he wants to join the Army. Of course, he's 12 right now. He may not want that in the future, but I'm definitely going to tell him about that program. That will get him psyched out.
Biggest thing, the best nugget I will give you, as you know, life is all about who you know, right?
Mhm.
So in the event that time comes, reach out to me. I know a lot of CW5s, and when you have CW5s in your corner or people that got to write recommendation letters, 'cause I don't know the process exactly, but I'm pretty sure you'll need some type of recommendations or something. In that event, just let me know. And that goes for everybody. Just because a process is hard, that's the process to weed people out to see if they really want to do it. But if you know the right people, I'm telling you, we definitely can make that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that offer. That's awesome. Yeah, so after flight school, where do you go? Did you stay at Fort Rucker or did you get deployed? What's the next
So
step?
what happens, another thing on selection day I forgot to mention is when you pick your aircraft. So for example, they'll have 10 Blackhawks, right? When they have the Blackhawks on the list, there'll be a duty assignment next to that. So Blackhawk 1, Germany. Blackhawk
Mm.
2, 3, 4, and 5 need to go to Egypt. The rest of them, Fort Irwin, whatever the case may be. So I picked to go to Egypt. I left flight school. Now I want to just get you caught up again. I leave Iraq, go to Washington, grab my family, drive down to Alabama, straight to Warrant Officer Candidate School, straight to flight school for 15 months. Then I select to be a Black Hawk pilot. I do that for I think it was about 12 weeks. After that, they sent me to Egypt. So I went and lived in the Sinai for about 10 months. And that's pretty much how it works. You'll get that duty assignment, and then you just start flying from there. Show up to your duty assignment, and you're the new guy. You got to do your fridge duties. You're pretty much one thing the Army's good at, and I'm only using this word for a lack of better words, but the Army is good at hazing. You're gonna come in there. You're gonna do the do boy stuff, clean the toilets. Even as a warrant officer, I show up. I will, I'm used to the enlisted life, and I'm thinking, man, I'm a warrant officer. Life's gonna be great. Nah, I show up to the unit, definitely not. Santiago, go make the coffee. All
The know
right.
your role, right?
Correct. but it's a part of the process. I think it's a way for when you show up, we all have to prove ourselves, right? So when you show up, they give us medial tasks like you got to be responsible for the fridge fund. It's a fund where we have snacks. So the senior warrant officers and the commanders, they want to see how you respond to small adversities because essentially you're going to be flying a helicopter and big things. If you can't handle the small things, how are you going to handle the big things essentially?
Yeah, I think my perspective in society has gotten to a point where we coddle the mind, right? We coddle kids, and uh, just my perspective of like still the military does not coddle. They want to create mentally strong professionals in whatever duty. So whenever something does happen, they don't react with the flight portion, they react with the fight portion, right? The flight or fight. They go and attack, if you will. So kudos to that. Look, I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, and hopefully this one right here is providing you with a ton of value. We want to make the best content possible and find the best guests possible so you're getting a ton of value. The simplest way you can support us in doing that is simply by sharing this episode. So please hit the share button and share it with somebody you know who will get something out of it. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you very much. Okay, so you go to Egypt. Let's talk about that. Like, what's the U.S. military present in Egypt? Why is that a strategic position? And then what was your duties to fly in Egypt? What's the day to day look like there?
So in Egypt, it's essentially a peacekeeping mission. It's called multi forces observation. So you have several different countries out there. You got Colombia, you got New Zealand, you have Fiji, you have different branches of the military. I think Canada's out there. So essentially, we are there just to keep that. I can't remember the name, but there's a Gulf of, I think
The
it's the
Ju-
Gulf of Aqaba.
okay, the Gibraltar Strait and stuff like that
Yeah,
out there.
we
Gotcha.
keep that open, that supply route. We're just there as a peacekeeping force to keep that straight open so the supply chain for the world could keep moving in and out. That's essentially that was my understanding of how it worked. So there was two locations in Egypt. We're in the Sinai Peninsula. You had North Camp, which was very close to Israel, that area, and then you had South Camp, which was by Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. Uh, South Camp, that's where I was majority of my time for I would say the 9 out of 10 months I was there. And essentially all I did was resupply the infantry guys that were on. It's called it's like Tehran Island, little small island out in that Gulf, the Gulf of Aqaba. And all we did was resupply, resupply, resupply. And essentially that was our job.
Okay, not fire support, but supply support. That's pretty cool.
Correct.
Yeah, and so, I think I've heard a few times in the news where, we've had, like, not necessarily US ships, but, shipping, freighters, if you will, that have been attacked in that region, and so, to have a presence, it sounds like a worldwide presence to keep the flow of supplies going, is really a main mission. And as a consumer, that I'm super thankful for that, right? Because
Mhm.
all we do on the consumer side is we go to Amazon or whatever, and we click purchase, and it shows up, right? But we don't think
Yeah.
about all the things it actually takes for that to actually arrive at our doorstep. So, um, U.S. military has a presence to keep those lines going. That's super impressive. So, okay,
Yeah.
so they consider that a deployment, or is that how that works?
I think now they may. When I was going, it wasn't. It was called a PCS. So you just overseas PC primary. Yeah, I can't remember. Permanent change of station. It's been a while, but it is a PCS. You move there. You normally stay 10 to 12 months, depending on what's going on. And essentially, like I said, it's just peacekeeping mission. We don't even get weapons or anything. We're not really there to, you know, do anything with hostile intent or any combat action, nothing like that. So it's very just go there, keep the peace between essentially Israel and Egypt, and we just keep it pushing from there.
Awesome. Okay, so after this stint in Egypt, now you have another deployment to Iraq or Afghanistan, right? Where do you go now?
So I leave Egypt and they send me to 101st. And if anybody doesn't know the esteem and the pedigree with the 101st, it was a very I was excited to go. So that's where I went. I went to six I went to 101st Combat Aviation Brigade over in Fort Campbell. I was part of 6th Battalion. I show up, they sent me to the GSAB. So GSAB is essentially where we're flying generals. We're essentially the logistical component of aviation. We're moving people, parts, everything. So I went and I was a part of the Warlords, a very esteemed company. This company flew missions in Vietnam. So once again, right? I leave Egypt. I get to Fort Campbell. Literally 10 months after I get there, they're like, "Hey, Santiago, we're going to Afghanistan." So I get there at the end of '06. By the end of '07, we're getting ready to go to Afghanistan. So I was just moving. In the beginning of my Army aviation career, just go, 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 go. I really didn't have any time to even think about anything because before we deploy, we have to do training. The Army sends us to high altitude training out in Army. It's Butts Army Airfield out in Colorado Springs, Fort Carson. So you have to go out there, learn how to fly in altitude because when you're flying hot and heavy, it does matter. As you know, power management is a real thing. Even with a Black Hawk, we're 2 engines. This is a monstrosity of a beast, but we can still lose power. We can still droop rotors, all those crazy things.
Yeah, yeah, we call those the 4 H's, the high, hot, heavy, humid
Mm-hmm.
are bad things for lift, and so, yeah, just the power it takes to fly at those, and in Afghanistan is obviously high altitude, and it has extreme temperatures, cold temperatures, as well as hot temperatures, and so, um, the cold can be favorable for a helicopter, but the hot
Correct.
and the high are not favorable.
Definitely not.
Okay, so you get that training, you go to Afghanistan. What is your mission in Afghanistan at that point?
In 2008, my first deployment, I essentially, like I said, I flew a lot of generals around. We moved a lot of troops in the battlefield. That was pretty much it. We did a lot of people movement.
Mhm.
Then I also did. This is where I got privy to medevac. We had something back in 2008. A medevac aircraft needed to have a chase, so they need to have a platform that had guns on their aircraft to follow them. So I did a lot of med chase, and that right there, that's when I realized medevac was something I was really gonna enjoy just because of the adrenaline. I mean, we're talking about we're going from taking a nap to full craziness in literally a minute and a half. So
And
that
hot
2000
LZs, I'm guessing.
oh yeah, hot LZs, you name it. I mean, it's a lot of chaos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, kind of describe like what's a hot LZ that you've landed in that would just really got your hair stood up.
So technically, we were never authorized per se to land in hot LZs. For me, in 2008, the rules of engagement, especially 2012 and 13, they got very tricky, I would say. That's the best word I would use. So for me personally, landing in a hot LZ, I never done that. Now, were there other things that I did that were very questionable? Yes. But in one thing I always let people know, the reason I didn't do it is because one, the opportunities to do it were very limited. And when I have higher echelons telling me that I cannot literally go into something, I have to make that decision, right? So I never had that opportunity to go into hot LZs. Now, there were other opportunities where I did have to land on highways due to IEDs, enemies still in the area, and I would have to land. And the reason I say that is for me to land, I need certain calls from the ground guys. Okay? If the ground guys are telling me not to land, then once again I can't land. But there are ways around certain things that the way we operated where we had to, try to, what's the best word I'm looking for? Try to help the ground guys give us the clearance to land. But me personally, I never had the hot LZ. I never experienced that myself. Now, enemy in the area, yes. So one instance I'll talk about, one morning I'm flying back from Ghazni. That was middle Afghanistan, early in the morning. And as you spend more time in combat, you start realizing how the enemy operates. So in Afghanistan, the enemy really like to do things first thing in the morning. Anywhere from, we'll say, 6 o'clock in the morning to about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, peak time. So we're flying back, Route 1, going back to Bagram from Ghazni, and I see it in the distance. I see a traffic jam, and it's early in the morning. I'm thinking, a traffic jam this early? That's unlikely. So as we keep flying, I see smoke on the highway. And in the process, I realized that this army convoy just got hit by an IED. Now, literally, about during our debrief or our mission brief for that morning, they told us, if we're going to land anywhere, we got to get battalion approval if it's outside of the mission set. So once again, our hands are tied, right? So we're flying, we get there, we get on site, and we realize that these guys need our help. So immediately we're talking to the ground guys. Hey, what can we do? The ground commander's like, listen, I need you to come in here and get my people ASAP. Because one thing you don't need to happen is when you have critically wounded or KIA soldiers killed in action, you don't want to leave them with the ground force because it does degrade morale and it just creates a burden to carry these bodies and their people with them. Because essentially, especially if the enemy's in the area, you still have to get engage and do the mission. So once again, as I mentioned earlier, our hands are tied with a lot of things that we did. And essentially, we had to make a decision as a crew that, are we going to land right now without the approval of battalion, get these guys and take them back? And essentially, that's what we did. We landed the aircraft without the approval of battalion. Was it something we shouldn't have done? No. I don't know. I'm not going to say there's a right or wrong answer. We had to make a decision to preserve life at the time. And then we made that decision. So we landed, we picked up 3 people, took them back to Ghazni, and when we got back home to Bagram, chain of command wasn't happy. But I think the one thing that saved us from a disciplinary standpoint, the brigade commander of the soldiers that we saved, he called later on that day and he asked to speak to the crew. And he thanked us essentially for saving his people. And I think if it wasn't for that '06 that called up, we probably would have gotten in trouble for making that decision. And that was just the climate of Army aviation at the time. And it was unfortunate. It only got worse in 2012 and 13. We were very restricted. I mean, there was times where it was borderline hot LZ. Once again, me personally, I teetered with that line, and it's not because I was afraid of getting in trouble, right? It's because I know there was one instance I was out there helping some SF guys. The enemy they weren't actively being engaged at the time I was landing because it probably stopped probably 60 seconds before I got there. But I still made that decision. I knew the enemy was in the area, so I still landed to help these guys out. So it's just all about making that decision. And that right there, I think that what cripples a lot of people from a business standpoint, life standpoint. They're afraid to make decisions because they're afraid of the outcome of that decision.
Yeah. What SF Special Forces?
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows. Yeah, so yeah, you're making on the fly uh high pressure, high tension decisions and life and death is on the line. Was probably pretty common is my guess. And so talk to me about the culture that is not allowing these landings or these decisions to be made maybe at a pilot standpoint. I mean, you're the pilot in command, but obviously there's an order of operations within the unit and the combat mission, I'm sure. And so what's the holdback? Like why did the culture change of being able to land there land in places that needed additional support?
I think it came down to risk mitigation. And I think it got to a place where a lot of commanders didn't want to be that commander that an aircraft got shot down on their watch, or they something crazy happened, right? So I think I'm not sure why it really happened. I know we could backtrack, and I just want to show people the huge change of how I think I think we have to do things smart. I will say that. We can't be careless, we can't be reckless. But you talk about these aviators in Vietnam. These guys would literally these pilots used to get shot down, get rescued, get back to their fob, get another aircraft, and go fly a mission, the same mission, the same day, right? Different mentality. I mean, anytime I meet an aviator from the Vietnam era, these guys like walk on water because of the amount of things that they've done, right? So then you fast forward to our generation, the GWAT generation, where when we first started, obviously it's war. Rules are just, there's really no rules. You're just doing what you have to do to get the mission done. Now, as things start to progress, more politics roll into it. I think that's where the rules of engagement started rolling in. And it was very frustrating when you have our only, our primary mission as aviators in the Army is to support the ground guys. And when our hands are tied to help them, it's a frustrating thing. However, we do have a lot of, including myself, I was always willing to push the envelope. I'll get an ass chewing later,
Mhm.
but I think it's easy for people to Monday quarterback when they're sitting in a comfortable building, not realizing what's going on, or they may realize what's going on, but you don't want to gain a reputation as being a cowboy or somebody dangerous or that type. So there's, like you said earlier, there's a lot of things that are going on as a pilot in command of how far do I push this envelope? If I do push this envelope, now what's going to happen when I get back? Because depending on what you do, they could give you a flight evaluation board, take your wings away from you, and you'll never fly again. So there's a lot of things going on in the back of your mind as you're making these decisions.
Yeah, there's disciplinary actions that are definitely going to influence those decisions, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, kudos to. I can't imagine. I mean, I've always flown civilian. I mean, those decisions are not the same. I haven't faced anything. We'd land in LZs that were challenging, with no support. No LZ actually defined. We would just under NVGs or whatever in the middle of the night we'd land, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? Like, and obviously as in the civilian world, the EMS and the medevac world, we were very cognizant that like we're not going to go risk the lives of the crew in order to just save one because we might all end up dead. So that decision making was it was not to push weather, not to push fuel, not to push risk at the LZ and whatnot. You guys are in a different era, a different place to that I don't personally understand. So tons of respect, mad respect for you guys to fly in that environment and come home and be contributing members of society on top of that is just amazing. So thank you for your service on that. Let's shift gears a little bit on to business. You get out of the military and then you become an entrepreneur, which is fascinating. So talk to us about that journey and why you even wanted to be an entrepreneur. And it's another risk factor, right? We're taking on
Yeah,
more risk.
yeah. I think being an entrepreneur it is a monstrosity of a beast. One thing I want to touch on before we move to that, my 2012-13 deployment it was different in the aspect that I was pure medevac, right? I was just thinking of a time where once again the LZ wasn't hot, but the reason the LZ wasn't hot is because the 58s were suppressing the enemy for me while I was landing in that LZ. And by the way, I'm landing in a confined area with two aircraft behind me. So, as I stated, even during that day, I have an American soldier. He got shot in the chest. Enemy still in the area. However, I know that the 58 guys, the Kiowa guys, they're suppressing him, and they're letting me know, hey, just stay away from this area. And when I say from this area, there's literally a wall, and they're on the outside of this wall. The enemy's out there, but I have the 58 guys suppressing them with rounds, right? So once again, how do I make this decision? I just have to. My level of taking on risk as a pilot in command, especially a medevac pilot, was extremely high. I never wanted to be that guy that made a decision not to save a young man or woman's life. And then later on, I have to live with that decision. So, like I said, I always push that envelope. And that was only one of many other stories where, once again, enemies in the area, and we're gonna push this envelope just a little bit, just to do the right thing. Now, back to being a business owner. When you and I first talked, I told you, and I know you laughed at it. I said, there's three things in life that I realized that you'll never be ready for. And I used to think it was two things until I became an entrepreneur. But there's three things in life that you'll never be ready for. One, being a parent. I mean, no matter how many books you read, when your child comes to this planet, they just do things that the book didn't explain. You being a dad, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
The next thing is going to combat. No matter how much we fly at high altitude training school, how many dust landings I do under NVGs here in the States, when you get to Afghanistan and get to foreign countries, it's just completely different. You got the weather, the enemy, you got environmental factors, there's just limitations on the aircraft. There's so many things that you're not mindful of because you've never been put in a situation until you get put in a situation. Third thing is being an entrepreneur. So those are the three things you'll never be ready for, no matter how much you try to get ready. And I had to realize that the hard way. So when I was transitioning out the Army, I had to ask myself, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Luckily, I know that God put me on this earth to serve other people. So I've been serving our country since the age of 19, did 15 plus years in the Army. I retired early due to medical reasons. So I had to think, what do I want to do? So I said, you know what? Everything always bounced back to fitness, fitness, fitness. So in the process, I went and got my MBA at a Tennessee State University. I excelled in the program. Once I got done, while I would say the last 3 months of grad school, I became a coach. I was teaching group sessions, started getting to the fitness area. After that, I went to another gym and I started doing personal training. And I became very successful being a personal trainer, very successful. I mean, the business owner at the time of the gym, he didn't see anything like it. He's like, and I'm generating 10 to $12,000, 10 to 12,000 a month in personal training. So I did that for about 18 months. So I got this ideal in my head. Hey, let me open my own gym. And when I tell you that was probably, I'm not gonna say it was a bad decision. It was just I didn't know what I was getting myself into because I thought opening a gym was just I'm just gonna sign up a few people and do some personal training and call it a day, right? Not realizing that when you're an owner, you being an owner of a business is a job all in itself. So that's essentially why I did it. I wanted to go from one platform from saving lives to the next platform to continue to save lives, and the gym was the way to do it.
Yeah. So talk to me about owning a gym. Like, what are the big, like, what are some challenges that you face that you never would have thought, or like somebody that who's thinking about opening a gym themselves, like, what are they going to face doing that?
I think the first thing, I think a little bit of research would have gave me enough information to make a decision if I really wanted to open a gym or not. So what I would tell anybody, be mindful of the business you do open. Two of the highest failure rates, two industries with the highest failure rates, restaurants and gyms. And the reason being is we think it's so easy to open them until we realize this is not so easy. So my biggest thing is when I started, when I created FitRev Training, right? When I created this company, I had this very not cocky, but this mindset that everybody's gonna want to come to my gym. And I think a lot of gym owners have that mentality. Same thing with restaurants, right? We have this mentality, oh, I'm so great. Everybody's gonna want to be trained by me. And then you open a business and it's crickets, no one's showing up, right? because you don't realize you have to market, you have to network, you have to do all these other things. So I think for me, I walked into it very blindly, thinking that because I was a successful personal trainer, I'd be a successful gym owner. And I was. I mean, it lasted for close to 6 years, right? But as I mentioned, there was a lot of things: the marketing, the retention, keeping people, right? You got to convince people why it's important to work out when we live in a society where obesity is growing every year. We have access to a lot of junk food. We have access to technology that keeps us lazy and sedentary. So, how do I convince this person to give me their money, right? To train them and help them lose weight. And that's one of the biggest things I didn't realize.
Mm.
You have to be a good salesperson to own a gym. If you're not a good salesperson, it's just not going to work for you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, society as a whole, we're so focused on instant gratification. And I'm in the wealth game, which is everybody just wants to get rich quick. And it's like that's not how it works. That's not the real world. You know what I mean? The real world is like long term, over and over and over again investing is how you get wealth. I think that's the same with fitness. I have, if you saw me 3.5 years ago, I weighed about 50 pounds more than I do now. But it's taken continual dedication, day in and day out, of 3.5 years to get to, I weigh, I don't know, 198 or something like that now. So that didn't happen overnight. And I'm guessing that New Year's resolution comes along. Oh, I'm going to work out, and 21 days goes by, and they're already skipping the gym sessions and stuff like that. And that's not a. I'm not throwing rocks at just people in general. That's just we are just so wired to find instant gratification, and we don't want to. I love how I think it's Cody Sanchez like choose your pain, right? You're either going to be unhealthy and have pain for the rest of your life, or suck it up, go through the pain to become healthy and stay healthy. Those are two different pains, but they're both pains, right? You got to face one of them.
Oh, I agree 100%. And like you said, at one point, I was a fat gym owner. And I would say probably about 4 years ago, that's when I woke up, something snapped, the light came on. I realized that I was giving so much to my community that I was neglecting myself.
Mm.
So same thing with you. I lost 31 pounds. And the way I look now looks nothing like the way I look when I first opened my gym. I mean, it's night and day. But I realized something: losing weight, being successful, learning a language, becoming a millionaire, it all takes the same thing: consistency and discipline. That is it. And I try to get to my when I was training people, I would tell them this. And I think one of the biggest issues we have nowadays is social media, right? We always see the outcome. We don't see the process of the outcome, the struggle, the late nights, as you know, as an entrepreneur, being up. How am I going to make payroll? How am I going to pay all my overhead, right? People don't see that struggle. But I tell people, you have to decide. You either decide to do nothing and continue to live the life you want, and it's going to get you the result that you don't want, or you don't even have to do a lot every day. 30 minutes to an hour, 3 to 5 times a week, limit the food you eat. It is that simple. It is simple to lose weight, it's just not easy.
Yep.
Same thing with saving money, right? Learning how to play an instrument, speaking a language, anything you want to do in life. Going to college is all discipline, consistency, and trusting the process, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great advice. I have personally found that in order to achieve any of that, I have to have something bigger than myself to bring me to actually motivating myself to achieve that. And I don't know if you saw that in the gym world, like when you saw somebody who came in, they wanted to lose weight or get in shape, but they didn't have a overarching goal, if you will, a vision, or maybe a goal to a vision, um, versus that person that came in and was successful. Like they went through, they put in the work, it may have taken 2 years, but they did the reps and they are a better, healthier person now. What did you see? What was the common denominator or the difference between those two sets?
That's a great question. It's crazy you ask. I was just thinking about that. I realized now I want the audience to understand. I want people to understand. I've been doing this fitness thing for over 9 years. When I say I've come across a lot of people, I'm talking about thousands of people I've talked to, thousands, probably in the five-figure number of the amount of people I've talked to about losing weight. The biggest thing I realize with people, and this is a mindset thing, and one of the things that frustrates me the most about fitness is I think there's a lot of misleading information out there, and I don't think we really target and tackle the true the true problem with the individual. The biggest thing I realized with people that were successful and not successful, the people that weren't successful, I feel they felt like they didn't deserve to lose weight. And this stems from I'm not it could have stemmed from the way they grew up, the circumstances they were in, maybe the people they were around, but they felt like I saw a common pattern. They didn't feel like they deserved to be happy. They didn't deserve to put themselves first because I firmly believe that if you put yourself first, you're only going to be a better wife, a better husband, a better leader, a better pillar in the community, better everything, right? It's all about filling your cup first every day so you can pour into other people. The people that weren't successful were too busy people pleasing everyone else, and they had a mindset that they didn't deserve it. And
Mm.
that's one of the biggest things I realized. And once again, it could have stemmed from anything, the way they grew up, whatever it may be. But that's one of the biggest things I noticed. The people that failed, number one, their self value extremely low. Number two, they felt like they didn't deserve it. And number three, they were stuck in this trap. And that's why I tell people losing weight, tracking the calories and exercise is how you lose the weight, right? Those are the easy things. But starting that journey and staying on that journey, you have to start you have to start the process of self-love and self-care. It sounds corny, but it is a real thing because the moment you stop caring about yourself, you're just not going to take care of yourself. That's just point blank period.
Yeah, I love that. I heard a psychologist one time talk about weight loss, and she said, I wish I knew her, I remembered her name, but she said, "You'll never weigh less than what your brain thinks you weigh." And so she really focused on reshaping the mind in order for you to be receptive to weight loss. And I think that's true. Well, at least I reflect on my own weight loss journey. I always thought I was going to weigh 250. Just that's just what it was. You know what I mean? And life was going to be 250. And I finally got to a point where I was like, I don't want to weigh 250. I got to rethink. Like, and so I would preset my weight. So for instance, like when I was at 250, no, I weigh 240. And so then I would do the actions it took to be 240. And then I would reshape my mind again. I no, I weigh 230. I wouldn't tell people outwardly. I wouldn't lie about my weight, but I would tell myself that my weight is something different so that I could reset my brain to think that I weigh to think that I'm going to weigh the goal that I actually want to be. And I think that some people call that manifestation. I'm not a huge. I mean, I think it's important to think about things and have goals. I think that's super important. But at the end of the day, it's the actions that you take. It's the
Correct.
actions towards the goals that we have that actually makes the difference. Because I can hope and dream and have rainbows and butterflies all day long about whatever it is. But if I don't take any action towards it, like you said, the exercise, the eating right, then nothing changes, right? We stay in that same
Correct.
mode. And I would have died 250 pounds, maybe 260, because it's easier to creep up than it is down.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think with manifestation, you need action for manifestation to happen. Period. I'm firmly a believer that I'm just gonna be. I know a lot of this is going on in the world now. Just say it and it's gonna happen. That's not reality.
Yeah.
To me, people are just selling you like they're selling you wolf tickets, man. It is not reality. Saying things, then doing the things that you say you're gonna do, that's how you manifest.
Yep.
All right. I want to lose 30 pounds. If I just got up every day and say, you know what, I want to lose 30 pounds, but then I just sat on a couch and ate Cheetos all day, I'm not going to lose 30 pounds. I got to say these things. Then my actions have to reflect the things that I'm saying. Those two things have to go together. If they don't, you're just going to live a constant lie. And that I think that's where people are stuck. I think people, number one, are okay with lying to themselves. And number two, they think that they're doing something just by just saying it, right? Without doing. I get it. You have to start somewhere, but at some point you have to put in action. You don't learn how to become a helicopter pilot by just saying, I want to be a helicopter pilot, right? You have to actually go out there and do it, wiggle the sticks, read the books, learn all these the airspace, everything to become a helicopter pilot.
Yeah, I often think that when people just say it, it's just like lip service to themselves. Like they're just trying to make themselves feel better. At the end of the day, like you're probably going to cause more depression or whatever, like bad side effects because you didn't actually take any action. You wanted to achieve something, and then you'll live with regret, right?
Mhm.
You didn't accomplish that. So, yeah, I think that's it's interesting. We live in a strange society right now where we're just so dopamine hit after dopamine hit on social media. We want the instant gratification, and so few want to put in the work, the hard work that it takes to achieve big things. And, hopefully that will shift as a society. I mean, you look at business ownership, like 125 years ago. So in 1900, it was about 85%. Some say as high as 95% of Americans owned a business. Now that was farmers, they owned the local market or whatever. But now it's less than 8%. Only 8% of people have a business. And business is what makes the world turn. We live in a
Agreed.
capitalist society where we exchange for goods and services dollars, So it's just crazy that we have shifted so much. Now, there's not a right or wrong, right? But
Right.
when you mentioned, starting a gym is just way harder than you thought it would be, it just goes to prove like you got to put in the work, right, to make it successful and to make it a successful business that's worth fighting for. And you did that. You did that for 6 years. So tell me, like what were the good times? Like, what did it feel like to just be super proud? The gym is blowing and going, and you got a high membership. You figured out the sales side probably because that's where I would probably struggle is like getting people in the door. I'd just sit there. Why is nobody showing up? I would do the same thing you did, Jason.
Yeah, the best way to put it. So the first question, some successes. Two parallels, being a medevac pilot and opening a gym. The correlation of saving lives, right? I saved a lot of lives in my young life. And just that dopamine, you spoke of it earlier. I wanted to keep getting that dopamine, and that's how once again the gym opened. But when I used to fly these young aviators, and I would see the look in their eye when they started to get it, and I would see their confidence increase. I saw the same thing in the gym industry as with my clients. I mean, I would have people crying when they started to believe in themselves because that's essentially all I wanted people to do. Believe in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, you get to a point where you will start loving yourself and fixing yourself so you can love yourself, right? Because a lot of it is mental. So there was a lot of good times I had at FitRev. There was, I would say there was more good times than bad. I did enjoy being a gym owner, but the business aspect did start to weigh me down. But like I said, I think having that community was wonderful. Having my own gym, because I'm not a big box type gym. I don't like them at all. I don't like the environment. I don't like the stigma that comes with it, the people recording, it's just a lot of drama and nonsense in these big box gyms that I never had to deal with. And in my community, we never dealt with that. It was you walked into FitRev. Within the first 10 seconds, we are greeting you by name. Hey, Sean, how's your day going? And people loved that, right? We had a good environment in there. We had a good community. But those are the things We donated a lot of money. I mean, I gave the Ronald McDonald House, I think it was like an $8,000 check one time. So I love the donating. I love helping people change their lives. I love really seeing people change their lives and finally getting it. So being a gym owner, it was very rewarding. And I think one of the biggest lessons I did learn out of opening a gym, because there's a saying out there, if you could be a successful gym owner, you could own any business. And I won't say I was extremely successful, but what I do tell people is the gym lasted close to 6 years and we lived through COVID. All right. We're a small gym that lived through COVID. That right there says volumes to me. Right.
Mhm.
But it was a great experience. I think it taught me everything I needed to know for my next journey in life. I wouldn't change anything about it. It's like the Army, being a helicopter pilot. I learned so much. And I am so thankful for the Army giving that opportunity to push myself every day, to really test my courage. I know you're scared, but are you going to go fly zero loom, dust landing to go get this guy that we have to save, right? And then I just go and do it. Same thing with opening a business. I was scared. I was nervous, but I went and did it. But yeah, opening a gym was a good experience. Would I do it again? Probably not. But I did enjoy the experience. It was more good things than bad things.
Yeah, I love that. So, talk to me about the hardest times. Like, what were some hard times in the gym world?
Ooh, man, I'll give you a few. So first off, not being experienced in business acumen. I mean, I get it. I got an MBA, and this is something I want a lot of people to understand. There is a difference between academia and real world. No matter how many simulators you do in your MBA program, it is different when you own your own company and things are happening. Some of the hardest things, I mean, to be candid, I didn't get paid the first 2 years as a gym owner. Zero. I'm talking about nothing, to the point where it really affected my mental health, right? I mean, I'm working every day from 5 a.m. to 8 o'clock at night, trying to run a gym, do personal training, make sure my employees are good, make sure my members are good. On top of that, everybody wants my time, right? So I'm being pulled 10,000 directions. I got other business owners that want me to come talk to their people. So I am spread thin. And this is where I learned how I had to learn how to start delegating, right? Assigning tasks, having other people do things. But ultimately, sometimes when you have a blessing, people, and this is just people, they want you, right? For you experience it. Nah, Sean, I don't want to work with you people. I want to directly work with you. And what do you tell these people? No. And then you lose the money, right? So that was one thing. I mean, I'll give you a good example. When I first opened my gym, right? I'm in this, and once again, I didn't know this. I was being coached and mentored by people that I feel probably didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but I believed them anyways. So I opened an 8,000 square foot gym. All right. I only had 80 members. My rent was $17,000 a month. I have 80 members.
Woo!
I
Geez,
learned
you lost
within,
some sleep on that.
oh, you want to talk about sleep and gray hair? All right.
Man.
So I learned quickly that you have to try to stay ahead of this curve with flying. Same thing with flying helicopters, right? We talked about it earlier, the stabulator. We had a saying in the Black Hawk community that if a pilot was far behind the aircraft, and so everyone knows what I'm talking about. There's certain tasks you have to do in a sequence of events, right? I'm on short final. I know I'm with radar approach. They're transferring me to tower. I'm with tower till I get down to the ground, right? Once I get down to the ground, I'm going to transfer to ground frequency. However, they're telling you all this stuff, right? But if you're behind, still trying to figure out where the landing light is and going through the checklist, you get so far behind the aircraft, you get overwhelmed. That's when things start that's when bad things start to happen. Same thing in a business, right? So that was one example. I didn't get paid first 2 years. When I started getting paid, I was only making maybe 2 to 3 thousand a month, right? So I'm making maybe 24 to 36K a year as a business owner in a gym. The biggest thing I didn't account for, and something that I want all business owners to understand, when you're dealing with people, it's a whole different monstrosity of a beast. And when I say people, I'm talking about your employees, because you're going to realize, in what I'm not saying everybody, okay, but you're going to realize that sometimes people don't want to give you your best, but they're still going to want to be paid, even if they do half the work that you're asking them, right? They're still going to want to be paid. They're still going to have life, like they can't come to work because they don't feel good, or mental health, or so. Those are the things that really start the three things. I had to stay ahead of the business acumen and learn as fast as I can, because the landlord doesn't care if you have the money or not. He wants his money on the first, right? Your employees, same thing. Your employees don't care if you have the money or not. They want to get paid. They don't care. They do not care, period. And then the third thing is, sometimes you may not get paid as a business owner. I mean, it's just, and I've read books out there that say you have to pay yourself first, and I agree with that now. We're talking about the beginning of me, right? The later Jason, I did pay myself first, and I started changing things. So, but big learning curve, just like flying helicopters.
Look, I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, and hopefully, this one right here is providing you with a ton of value. We want to make the best content possible and find the best guests possible so you're getting a ton of value. The simplest way you can support us in doing that is simply by sharing this episode. So please hit the share button and share it with somebody you know who will get something out of it. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you very much. What's the darkest moment you've had as an entrepreneur?
Oh, the darkest moment is when I had to close the gym. I think realizing that, I think you get to a point, and it's about making those decisions, right? I realized it was probably one, I saw the writing on the wall that the fitness industry started to shift. So once again, I try to stay ahead of that, and I was making changes to the gym to stay ahead of that. I just essentially ran out of money. That's what happened. And it really hit home, probably the week I realized, it was the week right before I closed. I realized, you know what? I can't sustain this anymore. There's no more money. I didn't even have people to pay I didn't have money to pay my employees. And I think that was the darkest moment of being an entrepreneur. And what made it worse was, I had this misnomer, this misconception that I thought my community really cared about me as Jason, right? I thought they would be understanding. I thought my employees would be understanding of the decision I made. And it did not turn out that way. It turned into, and excuse my language, it turned into a shit show. I mean, people demanding their money back. And I didn't owe a lot of people money. It was probably, I would say, about 10 to 15 people, right? Employees, the relationships I had with some of the employees that I thought were friends of mine. I mean, it was a very dark point in my life. But it reminded me that when it comes to money, sometimes people will show you who they really are, and sometimes it may not be a good thing. I mean, I had some employees that stuck with me the whole way. Like, Jason, we'll get through this. Let's get it done. We'll close the gym up. We'll go transition. So I saw both aspects. I saw, same thing with my members. There were some members that were just stellar, supported me. Jason, hey, you did everything you could do. We understand. And then I had those few people, right? But just making that decision to close the gym was very hard, because I felt like a failure. I mean, I sacrificed. And by the way, when I opened the gym, I just had my baby, my daughter. So essentially, I got two babies, right? I got my actual daughter, then I got the baby at the gym. And I sacrificed all my time for the gym and its community. And I neglected my daughter. Not, I didn't neglect her. I was still present, did my daddy stuff. But I didn't invest as much time with her as I did in the gym. And then when I had to lose that, when I lost the gym, that was tough, very tough.
Yeah, yeah, you obviously had a long-term mindset to, like, if we could get through the gym stuff, this will be better for my daughter. And so many, I mean, I did that. I mean, I remember a time my kids are running around the office, but they're like, in the corner, and we're like running the business, just trying to make ends meet. And it was 2 years for us too to make the first dollar, any profit out of our business. And thank God it eventually did. But there was a lot of times where you think, is this ever going to make money? You
Correct.
know what I mean? And you're right. We find out like the Mike Michalowicz's book Profit First after
Yep.
the fact, right?
Yep. I actually read Mike's book. It was good. That's the book that changed a lot of my mindset, paying myself first. And so the whole banking, having the different checking accounts and all those things. So, yeah, that profit first did help me out. That was a pivotal shift in my entrepreneurial career as well.
Yeah. All right. So as you look at yourself as an aviator, a helicopter pilot, and an entrepreneur, you mentioned one parallel I think is super, super great. Not getting behind the aircraft, not getting behind the business. It's a great parallel. What other parallels did you find that were, well, you know what? This is just like being an aviator. I'm sitting here at the cockpit of my business, you know?
I think one of the biggest things, especially from a pilot and command slash business owner perspective, people are truly relying on you to make a decision. And once you make that decision, stand on it. Because the last thing people want is a leader who's indecisive, right? And that's something I experienced when I was talking about employees. I didn't realize how much your employees, no matter how much good you do for them, how much they're going to talk about you behind your back, right? And the crazy thing is you got those employees that are dedicated and loyal to the vision, bought in. The people that are negative, and I learned this, I don't know if it was from Mike's book, Profit First, but anytime you have a negative, cell in your employment, the importance of removing that cell immediately. If I learned anything, you have to be quick to fire people. That is a real thing. Any entrepreneur out there, if you're thinking about it as you're listening to this podcast, should I fire Susie Q? Fire her. Okay.
Yeah. If
Because if
you
it's
already
in
have
your
the
mind,
thought.
yeah, get rid of her. Trust me, you will find somebody else or you will have peace of mind.
Yep.
But those parallels of making decisions, right? You make those well informed decisions. You have to take calculated risks. And then once you make them, just stand on them. Everybody on the team may not agree with it, but that's why you're the leader. That's why you're the business owner. That's why you're the pilot in command, because you have that aptitude and that grit and that know-how to make that decision. Because in the cockpit and even on the gym floor, I've literally seen grown-ups just freeze. And I'm like, hey, are we here? Come on, wake up here, right? So I think that's one of the biggest parallels, making the decisions, sticking with them. With today's climate, I've also realized that people do need explanation
Mm.
in the cockpit. I mean, there was a time in Afghanistan. I only had this is a day I'll never forget. I didn't think I was gonna make it home. We got a 9 line in I would say the last 5 minutes of my duty day. So I want everyone to understand your duty day, right? I'll do a 24-hour shift, 12-hour shift. I can't remember what it was because it's been some time, but last few minutes of my duty day, I'm about to get off. Now, mind you, it's raining. The weather outside is horrible. It's at night. I'm thinking there's definitely not going to be any 9 line sent. Oh, how I was wrong. Literally 5 minutes left of my duty day. We get the medevac call, and it was for a cat alpha. So cat alpha is you have to have that person at a medical facility within 1 hour, the golden hour. And once again, with my experience, once I got that call, I felt the cascading effect happening. Like things were piling on top of me because I was with a very weak PI at the time. So I go up there, I talk to the TOC. The weather's extremely bad. We're going to one of the worst places in Afghanistan. Once again, enemy still in the area. I need to get support from the attack guys. The Kiowas even go in this area. It's dark. It's in a mountainous terrain. It's in a mountainous area. Like I said, the visibility is trash. And I haven't been to this spot in probably the last time I was in there was in 2008. So once again, I was just getting far behind the air. I was staying ahead of the aircraft because I knew it was coming, but essentially I was flying. I was solo pilot that day because my pilot he just shut down on me. He just literally shut down. And when we got back home, I mean, I talked to him pretty stern. I talked to the whole crew pretty sternly that day because I needed them to understand that, listen, if you are not cut out for this life, you have to tell somebody before you end up killing yourself or somebody else. Now, it's not at the same level in the gym industry, right? But I would see coaches freeze up when they're in front of a class. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when you have Susie Q over here that just got out of chemo, her body's weak, and now you're trying to have her do all these exercises. What are you gonna do from keeping her, one, from getting hurt, and two, creating a bad experience for her that she never comes back, right? And I would see coaches like just freeze and I would have to, hey, pull them back. It wasn't the same level as flying helicopters in a combat zone, but the way people shut down on you, there was a good parallel there. And as a leader, how do you mentor and guide these people so they could continue to at least function and do their job? So those are two things right there: decisions, how you deal with people,
I think
and
you hit on one too is communication.
yeah,
Communication in helicopters and flying is concise and direct, which I love in business, by the way. Like, just give me the brass tacks, tell me what's up, you know. And I love that, you know, like a radio call to a tower. They don't want the fluff.
yeah.
You know what
They
I
want
mean?
to know where you're at and what your intentions are. That's it. I tell
That's it.
people, I said, listen, be brevity is a thing. I used to tell my PIs that don't be on here talking, yeah, no, 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 no. Runway, where we're at on ground, where we're going, where
Yeah,
we're taking off to. That's all they want to know.
that's it.
Okay. Three,
Yeah.
I only want to hear three things out of your mouth, nothing else.
Yeah, and I actually love that in the business world because, like, I often find like small entrepreneurs, small business owners, they struggle with delegation, and it's because they get frustrated. I delegated that and they didn't do it right, and they just get mad about it. And I'm like, wait a minute, how did you communicate that to them? You know, did you set the right expectations of what you actually wanted to achieve? And I'm just such a big fan of, like, I'm going to be super clear, I'm going to be super concise, and this is what the goal we want to achieve. And then let them do it. Like, this is what I want done. This is how I need it to be done. And then go do it. You know what I mean? And then they'll find their own way to do the work and achieve the goal. And I found that that has been probably a 95% success rate. There's always, little tweaks and whatnot, and that's totally cool. But that's what I loved about, flying is that you there's no room for fluff. Like, you want to get an air traffic controller pissed off, start putting a fluff in your freaking radio calls and they'll call you out. As a matter of fact,
Correct.
I was doing a Delta crossing in San Diego International one time, and this Southwest Airlines pilot was on short final, and he goes, and you could tell the air traffic controller was getting upset. And he goes, "Ma'am, just because I talk slow doesn't mean I'm stupid." It was super funny. I'm like, yeah, we'd be concise, but then there's those other personality traits that go in. How do people receive information? How do you actually share information? It's just different for everybody. So
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think one of the biggest things I struggled with as a being a retired army guy to opening my own businesses, I realized that with my clear conciseness and my directiveness, because once again, I'm comparing this to being in the cockpit, right? Say what you mean what you say, clear and concise. Let's use brevity. Let's get out of here, right? When I tried that in the civilian world, it didn't work because one of the things I kept getting pushback on is I want people to understand as an aviator, our brains are moving pretty fast. And it took me some time to realize that maybe everybody's brain is not moving as fast as mine. So I have to step back and I have to slow this down a little bit. Be clear and concise, but we have to use a different approach to maybe not everybody knows that when something happens, I already have the problem solved. And then I'm assuming that they already know, right?
mm,
So I did assume a lot. That was one thing I did. I thought that people were on the same, and I'm not saying I'm smarter than anybody by no means. I'm just saying people process information differently, and I needed to understand that as a business owner and make sure I was conveying the message clearly to my people so they understood, right? I owe them to that as a leader to make sure they understood what was going on.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So now you are running an amazing podcast. I love listening to your podcast, by the way. Heroes
Appreciate
Have
it.
Wings. It's really cool because to me, like uh, I always aspired. I wanted to be a helicopter pilot in the army. I didn't go that route, but it gives me a little window. Although I can't really comprehend what you guys go through, but it gives me a little window into the world, and you get to feature some really cool people that have fought for this country. So I just encourage everybody to go check that out. Heroes have has wings. It's on YouTube. Guy everywhere you can find
Yep.
a podcast. You guys also have a Facebook page, I know. Um, but talk to me about that. Talk to me about your mission with the podcast, what you really want to achieve, and why you do it.
I started Heroes Have Wings for a few reasons. When I was closing the gym, so to be upfront with everybody, let me leave that right there. When I was closing the gym, I needed something else to do, right? But in the process of being a gym owner, as I said earlier, and being a retired helicopter pilot, and I flew a lot of dignitaries, did a lot of medevac missions. A lot of people want to hear my story, right? So I would go on podcasts, and I realized that when I would go on podcasts, they'd only ask me, maybe it'd be like a 30-minute podcast, and we really wouldn't even scratch the surface. Then I realized, just doing my research, that there was a space missing for Army aviation, especially for the medevac in the medevac world. And I just wanted to create a platform for the world to really understand what these flight medics, these pilots, these crew chiefs, at what level are we willing to risk our life to save other Americans? And one of the biggest things I'm trying to get across to Americans, because our country is very divided right now, very divided. It's very contentious right now, and I'm not a politic guy. I believe in America, and I'll keep it at that. But I need people to understand, like, when you have people in the military, their level of commitment to the Constitution and to this country is pretty big, and the level they would go to help other Americans. I want Americans to see what the true American spirit is really like. When you have this person 18, 19 years old jumping out of an aircraft, and they know it's a hot LZ and there's enemy in the air, and they're willing to go save another American, that's the true American spirit. It isn't what you may believe or how we're different. I mean, those are the things that make us a great country, right? The diversity in this country. That's one of the biggest things. One, I think there's a lot of stories out there that need to be told, because realistically, people always talk about the special operations guys, the Navy SEALs, the Delta guys, but they don't ever talk about the people that move these guys, the aviators, the Black Hawk pilots, the Chinook guys, the crew chiefs, the medics that go get them when they get hurt. So I wanted to create that platform for them. I want the American public to know that there are true Americans, true American heroes in this country, and what the true American spirit looks like too, when your number gets called, and what you're willing to do to help other people.
Yeah, I love that. I think you do that really well in that podcast. So yeah, keep it up, man. I hope you keep growing that and focusing on it. It's superb. So you mentioned, I think before the show started, that you were hoping it to get into law school. So tell me about, like, why be a lawyer? What intrigues you about that? What kind of law do you want to practice? And will you be an entrepreneur through that? Will you own your own law practice? Is that your future goal?
Great question. So on March 5th, I'm a part of a fraternity, it's Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. It was called Kappa's on the Hill. This is on March 5th. So we went to the state capitol here in Tennessee, Nashville, right down the street from me. And I spent a day there, essentially, with the legislators, and it was open, and they were, talking about things. And I just realized that the first thing is, one, that like with flying, I'm smart enough to do this. I can do this, right?
I can fly a helicopter. I can do
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. So that was the first thing I said. Hey, I'm smart enough to do this. The second thing is, to be candid, I felt like people that look like me weren't being represented enough, right? So I said, maybe with me being smart, my experience, I could be that voice for a lot of people. So that's where it started. And I said, man, let me just look into it, what it looks like to be a lawyer, what I have to do. And so I just started that process. And now, like, I signed up for the LSAT. I'm going to apply for law school. And my biggest thing is I want to continue to serve people. I'm going to focus on family law. That's the biggest thing. Family law. I'll probably dabble into some civil rights stuff. And then, maybe I'll consider doing politics later as well, right? So that's probably down the road. Do some That was another thing. I asked some of my buddies who are already lawyers. I said, "Hey, how do they become politicians?" I go to law school. I'm like, "All right."
That's right. It was like
So
95% of them are probably attorneys. Yeah,
correct. So I may think about that. May want to be a judge one day. That's something else that will interest me, right? I think I want to do a lot of this is what I believe. I feel a lot of people deserve a second chance in life. Now, if you do something crazy, then no, right? But I think bad things happen to good people sometimes.
sure.
And with the way things happen, they may not have the money to do it. It may be a lot of factors, right? I don't know. But that's the biggest reason. The reason I really want to do it is to continue to serve people and help people. That's the main thing. That is me helping and serving people is in my DNA, and it's just a I used to tell myself as a gym owner, the gym was just a platform to get me to bigger things in life, right?
Yeah.
And I feel with becoming a lawyer, going to law school, that it'll help me get there. Now, to answer that second question, yes, I do plan on opening my own firm. Everything I learned from the gym industry, I can apply to being a lawyer, from the marketing to the selling, right? To keeping creating programs where I keep clients. So there's there's a huge similarities in between both of them.
Yeah. I had an attorney tell me a long time ago, and before I say that, I figured out, like, if you haven't been sued at least 3 times in business, you haven't been in business long enough. And I remember this one time, it was like a total principle matter. And he goes, Sean, the most expensive kind of law you'll ever have is the law of principle. If you want to fight something on principle, it will cost you millions. And he's like, the reality is the only one that's going to get any money out of this is me, the attorney.
Definitely. And my lawyer told me the same thing. He said, "Hey, listen, if we fight this, it's going to be worth more money than it's really worth.
Yeah.
So let's not really." And it had something to do with trademarking with FitRev.
Oh yeah.
I don't want the people to think it was something crazy, but it has something to do with trademarking with FitRev training. And ultimately, I won the case because I think a lot of people reach out there sometimes, right? They just
Sure.
One thing I learned, my business partner taught me this. One of my business mentors, he said, when you open a business, if it's true or not, people are always going to think you have money.
Yep.
So they're going to try to sue you. They're going to ask for money. It's just going to be a lot of craziness. So he said, be ready for it, Jay. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of craziness happened.
Yeah, and reality is most business owners struggle financially. And yeah, I think society does have that persona that there's just a bunch of money behind the door, and there's not, in a lot of cases, and even if there was, it doesn't make it right to go after it. It's
Correct.
just, but anyhow, yeah, good lesson from your business mentor. That is definitely true in the business world. So, Jason, final words.
Final words, I would say, if it's flying a helicopter, being an entrepreneur, losing weight, becoming rich, all these things take time. Everything takes time. Figure out what you want to do. And I created the 4 Ds. It's called the 4 Ds, the elevation, right? So the first thing you have to do in all these steps, you first have to decide that you're going to take the steps and commit to these steps to reach whatever goal it is. Lose weight, become a helicopter pilot, save money, whatever it is, learn a language. So first thing, you have to decide you're going to do this, and once you decide, you have to commit to that process. The second thing is you have to develop habits. Habits is what creates long-term success. When I say that, going to the gym consistently 3 to 5 times a week, walking 2 to 4 times a week, tracking your calories. It's not the reason you do these things is to create healthy habits, and these habits will translate with you throughout life. So as you develop these habits, you create a discipline. And when I say discipline, a real discipline, when you wake up in the morning, you don't feel like going to exercise, you still go. You wake up in the morning, you don't feel like saving your 10% for the trip that's coming up because you need it now. Discipline. You do the discipline. So you decide, you develop the habits, it creates discipline. And the last thing is you don't miss. Consistency, consistency, consistency. We are all familiar with the story about the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise wins every single time. And if you don't think it's a real thing, look at the fitness industry right now, right? You got all these people taking medications to lose weight. They're not fixing the problem. They're losing weight, but it's not in a healthy way. They're doing the hair process. They want a fast solution. So that'll be my biggest final thoughts. My 4 Ds: decide, develop, discipline, don't miss. You use this approach to everything you do in life, and you will find yourself a year from now, whenever you start it, your life will be completely different. And it's going to be the same thing when I start law school, right? I did the same thing. I decided I was going to do it. I'm creating habits right now by studying for the LSAT every day. I'm doing an hour a day. And that's another thing. It doesn't take a lot of time, everybody. If you give yourself 30 minutes to an hour every day, you will lose weight. You will get to a point where you track your calories. It literally takes you 5 minutes. Not even that. I'm to a point where it takes me 2 minutes a whole day, right? So as you get better, and then just be consistent. When you decide this, just think about where your life will be a year from now. And you'll see you'll be a completely different person, whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I think is super underrated is developing habits. And anybody can develop and shift their habits from where they are today. And it is super underrated, but it shouldn't be because they should be like I'm a, creature of habit, if you will. Like I like routine. Get up the same time because I
Yep.
go to bed the same time every day. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
eat the same food because I know it's in my calorie count. Like I can maintain that food and keep my weight where I want it to be. So kudos to that. That's a good life lesson, Jason. It has been a complete pleasure to hear your story, and even for those young aspiring aviators, if you will, I hope they get to hear this story too because really anything's possible. And thank you for your service. Thank you for your time today and sharing your gym experiences as well. Cheers, man.
Cheers, Sean. Thank you, man.
Thank you. If today's episode hit home, share it with a friend and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.